Hi guys, this is Weasel for PokerVIP.com. I'm here with Mate, also known as Scraper420 from the forums. Hello Mate.
Hello,
Hi, how's it going?
going good?
Excellent. So hopefully maybe you could just introduce yourself to all the watchers of the video. Maybe you could tell us how long you've been playing poker, what kind of limits you play, and anything else you want to tell us.
Yeah, sure. I started playing poker when I turned 18 a year ago, almost a year ago. Started with SNGs, micro stakes SNGs, and tournaments. I slowly lost my bankroll and left with a few binds of NL2, and I grinded it up from there to about NL10 bankroll now.
Okay, great. And how's it going so far at NL10? I mean, your graph looks pretty good.
I haven't played much of NL10 since yachting that didn't have very good games there, so I withdrew my bankroll and I will deposit it on Unibet soon.
Okay, so this graph we have here, is this mostly PokerStars or it's a different network?
This is the first part is PokerStars, I think, and the rest is yachting.
Okay, do we need to add another player to the alias here? Because I noticed it says PokerStars. Do you have more hands in your database apart from these?
No, this is all because the yachting uses a converter that basically writes it out as PokerStars.
Okay, that makes sense. And your alias, your screen name's the same on both PokerStars and Yachting, basically.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So what we'll do is let's just have a quick look at by stakes, just so we can see exactly how many hands you played at each limit. Any comments on your database before we do a review? Like, is there any areas of your game that you feel that maybe you need to work on, or?
Yeah, I basically on NL10, the few thousand hands on NL10, I did really bad because I think it's just the sample, and I was playing worse than I usually do because I guess I get scared of the stakes. Never played NL10,
Okay.
so I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, it seems like you've got the bankroll for NL10, but so far, when you've been shooting NL10, it hasn't been going very well. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you can see there's 65k hands here, and most of them actually most of them are 5NL, aren't they? There's lots of 5NL hands here, and there's
Yeah.
about just over 6k of 10NL. Overall, your win rate's very good. You can see your overall win rate there is 6.65. That's a pretty good win rate. Let's just head back to the cash results graph. And one thing that I notice is your red line possibly could use a little bit of work. It's about minus 10 BB per 100 hands at the moment. I think actually it might even be slightly lower than this.
Yeah, it's about it, I think.
Yeah.
Around there somewhere.
So you're playing a very showdown-oriented game at the moment. Like, most of your strategy seems to be regarding making value hands and getting paid off, which is okay for the low limits. There's nothing wrong with this, but there might be ways that we can find spots where you can pick up a few more pots and improve your red line.
I think so too.
So let's head over to the stats report. Let's go to Leakbuster position. Let's have a look at a few of your stats, and if we find anything interesting, we'll write it down. Okay, so you're playing 23-18, well actually more like 24-19, which is completely fine. Let's have a look at your race first in numbers. So you have 16 from EP. Already this looks slightly high. It might be a variance thing. Let's just have a quick look at the kind of hands that you're open raising in this position. So this is your raise first in range. Do you have any charts you follow or anything, or do you just play by feel? Or
Yeah, but I think in the first maybe 20,000 hands on stars, I didn't have a chart, so some of the ranges there are wider than what I use right now.
okay, because as you can see in your opening range here, there's one or two hands that maybe shouldn't be in here. So stuff
Yeah,
like Ace 10, King Jack, you don't want to open those as standard usually. There's a few random stuff as well, like Queen 6 suited and King 7 suited. So a few strange hands like this. So your overall raising frequency is about 16, and we should expect to see about 13 or 14. So it's not a big problem, but it's slightly too high because if you compare your EP raise first in and your MP raise first in, you can see there's not actually a very big difference. There's only about 1.5% difference between the two. And MP is about where it should be. EP is a little bit high. These are small problems, so it won't take you long to fix these. You just need to look at a hand chart and make sure you don't open too wide. So it's not a big problem at all. Cutoff 28.6, that's fine. Button is 42.8. Do you have any thoughts on this? Do you have any thoughts on this frequency?
Yeah, I think it's a bit too low. I guess I can't get used to opening hands like King Deuce suited and about hands like that. Queen 7 suited on the button. Maybe even worse. So
yeah. Okay.
Queen 3 and that sort of. I just auto fold.
Okay. All right. So one of the things regarding this is understanding when you can make automatic profit with any two cards by raising on the button. And in order to help you do this, you'll need to have the correct fold to steal stats. Do you have those on your HUD at the moment?
Yes, I have fold to steal from big blind and small blind, and specifically big blind to fold to small blind steal.
Okay, right, that's great. So your small blind open looks okay at 45, so I think you're definitely using your big blind fold to small blind steal stat, but I think button you're open raising 2 type by default, so you should be opening about 48% here on the button, and you're probably not using the fold to steal stats as well as you could be. As a rough guide, well, what do you think? How high does the fold to steal stats need to be for us to open raise any two cards on the button?
On the button?
Yeah.
Just a second. I don't know exactly. I'll calculate it.
Okay.
It's 66%, right?
Yeah, overall, right?
Of both players,
yeah. Yeah. So what do you think there would need to be individually in order for you to open raise?
About 80%, I guess.
Yeah, exactly right.
A bit over
yeah.
80. Yeah.
Exactly right. So if you multiply the two frequencies together, so the small blind fold to button steal and the big blind fold to button steal, and the result is over 66%, then that means you should be open raising any two cards. So I think that's the first area, increase button stealing frequency. So it's currently 42%. So it should be 48% by default. And it should be even higher if you're making use of the fold to steal stats. So let's write that down. Okay. Alright. Any questions?
No.
No? Okay. Alright. So I think that's the first area, and that will help you with your red line as well, because there's a lot of free money where you can just open raise any two cards on the button, and it's just really, really easy way to boost your win rate.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's have a look at cold call. You can see cold call there is 11.6 overall. Do you have any thoughts on cold call number?
I think it could be a lot bigger on button and cutoff. But I don't know exactly how big it should be.
Okay, all right. I would say actually you're doing okay on the button. I think 11.6 cold call from the button's okay, actually. I think this is fine. I think that's about where it should be. Cutoff could be slightly higher. It could be about 8%, but I don't think this is necessarily a problem at all. Normally, for the overall cold call stat, we're expecting to see about 13% cold call for a winning 6-max reg. So somewhere you're not cold calling enough, and I don't think it's button or cutoff. I think it's probably here in the big blind. You can see 19.6%. So normally we'd expect big blind cold call to be about 26%. So you're missing, 6.4% or so from your big blind cold call. So I think that's the next area is defending more from the big blind. Let's put by cold calling for now. Let's just filter for two spots, two big blind cold calling spots, just to see where the problem's happening, because you might be cold calling enough in some spots but not others. So let's just run a quick filter. So what we'll do is we'll say that we're in the big blind and we face a raiser, and the raiser's position is the small blind. So this is one of the areas where we should be cold calling a lot, because we're always going to have position post flop. So let's have a look at your cold call and 3-bet numbers in this spot. So you can see here, when small blind opens, you're cold calling 27.5 and you're 3-betting about 6%. So that gives you a total defending frequency of about 33.5%. However, this is a spot where we should be defending about 50% of the time. So you can see you're really under defending in this spot against a small blind open. Let's just bring up some ranges. Let me just show you what you could be defending in this spot.
Wow, that seems really bad of me. I didn't know I did that so little.
Yeah, so you're missing a lot of hands basically.
Yeah.
So let's just find big blind versus small blind. Should be here somewhere. Here we go. Big blind versus small blind 2.5x. Okay. So if we just have a quick look, this is the defending range. Okay, so dark red is 3-bet, dark blue is cold call, and light red is 3-bet for value. So dark red is 3-bet bluff. If we just have a look at the frequencies here, you can see value 3-bet is 6.18%, bluff 3-bet 9.65, so that adds up to about 15% 3-bet. And then you can see the flattening range here is 34.09. So it's roughly a 50% defending frequency. So this is against a 2.5x open. So obviously, if someone makes it 3 big blinds and we defend less than 50%, maybe 41% or something, if they make it a min raise and we defend a lot more often, we defend like 70% or even 80% of the time against a min raise. So it does make a big difference what sizing they use. But on average, your defending strategy should look like this. So you can see you're missing quite a few hands. Okay. Any questions?
Okay. I guess I want to ask you why are hands like King 5 and King 6 in the 3-bet bluffing range?
Okay,
I mean,
so this is a flatting range right here. The King 5 and King 6 are flats.
Yeah, but offsuit.
Okay, so it might seem at first like this is a really wide range to 3-bet, right? I mean, these aren't very good hands. I don't think anyone thinks King 8 offsuit's a good hand. It's not. It's a very bad hand. But the idea here is, if we follow a traditional strategy where we 3-bet hands which are slightly outside our calling range, well, the problem here is we have to call so many hands because the small blind opens a wide range, we have position, so we have to cold call a really wide range, 35% of hands. So if our 3-betting range is weaker than this, then it's going to involve 3-betting some really weak hands. So this is the first thing to understand about big blind play, is just understanding how wide you should go with a 3-bet. Now the reason I've chosen these specific types of hands, firstly, they're all hands with a blocker, right? You've got a King X blocker here, Ace X blocker. Yeah. The second reason is that they're high equity hands. So they don't play as well as something like, 8-9 suited. That's a high playability hand. These are high equity hands. They have good raw equity, which is what we want when we have position. Usually playability is not so important when we have position. It's just about having as much equity as possible. So these are the bluffs with the most equity. Whereas, if we're out of position, we tend towards bluffing stuff like these hands because we don't care about equity so much when we're out of position. We care about playability. So that's why I've chosen the hands here, because they're all high equity hands. I either have a king or an ace or a queen in them, basically.
Okay, great.
Okay, does it make sense, or do you have another question?
No, it makes sense.
Okay,
thanks.
Alright, okay. So let's filter for another spot. So let's just imagine now that we're still in the big blind, but now the razor is going to be on the button. So just to give you an idea, we're looking for about 31% cold calls in this spot, and probably about 13% 3-bets, somewhere around there. Let's just have a quick look at what you've got. So this is big blind defense against the button open. Okay, so you can see here, cold call, this is just way lower than the number I just said, right?
Yeah, a lot.
In fact, the interesting thing is your overall cold call is about 19%, and your cold call big blind versus button, which is one of the widest spots we cold call, is actually less than your average cold call, which is a little bit strange. So this should be about 31. So you need to be calling almost double what you're calling in the big blind right now against the button open. So again, let's just have a look at the range just so you can see how this works. So we're going to look at big blind versus button. Again, this is a 2.5x. So remember, if they make it 3x, we defend tighter. If they make it a min raise, we defend even wider. So let's just have a look at the frequencies here. Okay, so value 4.52. This is actually pretty tight value betting range, but it's fine. 4.52, bluffs 5.543. So it's actually about 10% 3-bets here. And I think in theory we should actually 3-bet more aggressively than this. It should be maybe 13% or so. But this is probably good for the limits you're playing. And you can be a little bit careful using these hands. You don't have to obviously use these against calling stations or anything. So And then if you look at the flattening frequency, you can see there, I think this is the most important thing right now. Don't worry too much about 3-bets just yet, but the flattening range is 31.52. So if you look at the hands in blue, this is the most important part of what we're talking about right now. That's what you should be calling.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a way to just look at the flattening range, but and then, you know, for example, if they min raise, then our defending range starts to look a little bit more like this. So very, very wide defending range, a lot wider than many people imagine. So one of the filters we can do, let me just give you an example, is we've already run the filter for button opens, and we call in the big blind. Now what we can do is you can put a very simple filter where you put VPIP equals no. This means we actually folded against the open. Another thing we can do is we go to bet size filters, and we just put facing raise size. Let's put less than 2.6. Okay, so it's a 2.5x open from the button or lower, and you can see all of the hands you folded. So one of the things you can do this in your own tracking software, because you mentioned you had Holder Manager 2. So what you can do is you can run the same filter, and you can go through, and if you see any hand in this list that's highlighted in this grid, it means you've possibly made a mistake. So one of the things that, just to give an example, is that against any 2.5x button open or less, we always defend any ace-x hand. They just have too much equity to fold. So if we look at the list, let's just put all hands here, and let's sort by card strength, and let's look at how many offsuit aces there are. Can you see there's quite a few, right? Quite a few offsuit aces here. So let's just open one as an example. Okay, so just move these HUD things a little bit. So we're in the big blind with ace-8 offsuit. This guy min raises, and the other thing is this guy looks like he might be, you know, a pretty weak player actually.
Yeah.
So you've got ace-8 offsuit. If you just look, for example, at the potters you get as well. I mean, we don't care that much about potters pre-flop. Sometimes people look too closely at this, but you can see like the potters we get are insane, right? We only need 23% equity to call, and that's ignoring any equity realization. So we probably need a bit more equity than that. But you know, any ace is going to have a huge amount of equity against the button opening range. I mean, this guy could easily be opening 50% or even 100% of hands. There's actually a very good chance you have the best hand here. So there's absolutely no reason why you should be folding in this spot. Just a really easy call with any ace, and even if you made it 12 or 13 cents, it's just a really easy call with ace-8 offsuit.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, let's just look at one more example. So let's pick out a weaker one of the hands that we should defend. So for example, King 9, this is a defend against a 2.5x. So let's see what happens. So he min raises, this guy folds. Really easy defend here. Excellent price. I mean, this is a min raise, so we should defend super wide against the min raise actually. You know, as we saw, our flattening range against the min raise looks like this. So we're just hardly ever folding against the min raise from the big blind.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. In hindsight, I guess not right now I would call this hand, but I don't remember why I didn't do that then.
Yeah. You know, don't worry too much, and just keep in mind as well that I don't think it's a good idea for you to suddenly just defend super wide against button opens. This is something you should do a bit gradually, because remember that you have to be able to play these hands post-flop as well. So there's no point expanding your pre-flop range if you make a lot of mistakes post-flop. So the best way to do this is, rather than just suddenly add a whole bunch of extra hands, you just want to do it gradually. So you start off now, and then maybe in a few weeks' time, then you're defending as wide as you should be. But you have to work on your post-flop play at the same time, because otherwise, what I'm telling you could lose you money, because you might defend a really wide range, you don't know what to do post-flops, you actually end up losing money rather than making money. So you have to change your game gradually. Does it make sense?
Yeah,
okay.
It does.
Alright, so I think that's all we need to look at now for cold calling. Basically, let's just write this down. Okay, so we've looked at two spots. So I put defend more from the big blind by cold calling. Especially, we've looked at big blind versus small blind. Defend about 50% range there. And especially big blind versus button. Okay, so let's move on. Let's clear the filters. And let's look at some of the other stats. So I guess we could have a look at 3-bet stat now. Okay, so your overall 3-bet here is 5.89. Do you have any opinions on this stat?
Yeah, it's really low. It's basically almost only value, I guess. almost.
Yeah, it's on the low side, but it's not that low. I mean, there's lots of guys in the micros who have like 3 or 4%. I don't think it's super low, but yeah, if you can get it above 7%, that's usually the best strategy. And if we look by position as well, you are showing signs of positional awareness, which is good. You can see here the cutoff is higher than MP and button is higher than cutoff. That's good. So as a rough guide, what we're aiming for with these stats is MP around about 4%. We're looking for cutoff. Want to get to about 6%. Button about 8 to 10%, and then the blinds about 8%. One of the ways you can increase your big blind 3-bet we've already seen today, which is big blind versus small blind. You could be, you're 3-betting 6% in that spot, and you could be 3-betting 15%. So that will help a lot, big blind versus small blind.
Yep.
Let's just have a look at a couple of examples. Now, the most profitable place to try and increase your 3-bet frequency is definitely the button and any spot where you're in position. So one of the filters we can run is, let's say that we're on the button, we face a raise, and the raise's position is the cutoff. And again, let's use the same filter we did before, which is VPIP equals no. So a very simple filter, cutoff opens, we're on the button, and we just decide to fold. So let's have a look what shows up. I think it's still loading, because I'm sure you didn't fold aces. Here we go. Okay, so let's have a quick look at a range here before we do some analysis. So let's bring up Equilab again. So button versus cutoff, let's have a quick look. As you can see, something's happened a little bit to the range here. There's no reason why it should be 50-50 like this. Hopefully you can make out what's going on. So the light red hands here in the top, these are value 3-bets. Dark red, these are bluff 3-bets. The dark blue hands are cold calls, and these hands in the middle are mixed strategy. What that means is, if the cutoff opens and we have something like King 10 suited, then both flatting or 3-betting are fine, and you should probably mix it up. You should probably play 50-50 or something.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just have a look. Now, one of the hands here in the bluff range, Ace 10 offsuit, this is an excellent bluffing hand. It has an ace blocker, which is nice, and it has a decent amount of equity if called. It can still flop things like, okay top pairs. Not great, but okay. So let's have a look at an example, ace 10. Let's see what happens. So this guy makes it pot. Let's find a different example. So we said earlier that the larger someone opens, the less we need to defend. That's an ISO raise spot, so it's probably okay to fold. You could definitely argue a defend. See if we can find a perfect example here somewhere. This is another ISO spot. Okay, this hand doesn't want to load. So anyway, just while we're waiting for that hand, oh here we go. Let's see what happened here. Okay, so here's what we're looking for basically. What's your initial opinion on this spot? So cutoff opens, we're on the button with ace 10. He doesn't quite make it 3x. It's like 2.8 or something. What's your opinion here?
Yeah, I think I usually don't. I think we should just. It depends really about his opening range, but I think we can pre-bet this freely.
Yeah.
But also sometimes mixing some calls. If his cutoff opening range is really wide, I think we can even call and have a better hand sometimes.
Yeah, you can definitely call actually as well. You can definitely call. In most cases, 3-betting just makes more money than calling. Like with the majority of hands, 3-betting is just better than calling. We should obviously still call some stuff, but the kind of hands that I recommend you call in this spot are, well, as we saw, the stuff like suited connectors. So I recommend you call stuff like 10-8, 9-8, stuff like this. And you tend towards 3-betting the high equity hands. So I think this is a pretty good spot to 3-bet. This is the guy's HUD, by the way. We've got 78 hands on him, and he's folded so far to 3-bets. 1 of 1, and actually it was in the cutoff, so seems like he might be capable of folding to some 3-bets. So probably a good spot. Let's just find another example. So another great category of hands are things like suited aces and suited kings. Let's see if there's anything like this here. So there's a couple of suited aces. Let's have a look. Suited aces are very strong hands in No Limit Hold'em.
Yeah.
So this is actually another ISO race spot. What's your opinion here?
He ISO'd 3x, so it's not. It's almost
I get super good odds to call just, I think.
Yeah, I think as well as stack size is not full. It's less than 40 BBs, so you know you probably don't need to 3-bet here. You can just call, I
Yeah.
think. But I think folding is not good. I think folding is just not the right play here when you're on the button, you have a very strong hand. There's a weaker player involved in the pot as well. So there's not really good reason to fold here. Let's try the other ace-7, see what we find. See if it's a similar kind of spot. So this is a pot size open. What's your thoughts here?
Not sure, really. It's weird. I don't find myself in this situation a lot, so.
I mean, if
I guess I'd rather 3-bet than call because, well, we can sometimes flop backdoor a flush draw or a flush draw or just 7, and we're not sure what to do when we call. But when we 3-bet, we have we are the pre-flop aggressor, so we can do some stuff there, I think.
Yeah, I think if let's say for example he makes it 2.5 or 3x, I think this is a super standard 3-bet, and you should probably 3-bet every time. I think. When he makes it pot size, it's a bit closer, but it is actually one of the better hands we bluff with, so I think we should still be 3-betting here usually.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to let's see if we can find a weaker example. Let's find for example in the range we've got King 6 to King 9 suited. Even like stuff like King 10 offsuit makes a pretty good bluff. Definitely stuff like King 9 suited, very good hand. There's quite a few King 8 suited. Let's check out one of these. Let's see if we can find a good example. So this spot you want to be 3-betting more when it loads, but also big blind versus small blind as well, as we've already seen.
Yeah.
So you know this guy's actually folding quite a bit to 3-bets apparently. As a reasonable sample there actually as well. You can see 88% fold out of 8, so I think that's like 7 out of 8. He's folded to 3-bets. This guy likes to fold a lot. Okay, so what do you think about this spot?
I think we should exploit his fold 3-bet by 3-betting a lot more, even wider than King 8 suited.
Yeah, exactly. So if this guy was unknown, we should still 3-bet King 8 because it's a great bluff hand, but especially against this guy with 88% fold to 3-bet.
Yeah.
And even though we only have 266 hands, he's folded to 7 out of 8 3-bets so far, so that's a reasonable indication that he's folding way too much. But yeah, even if he's unknown, you should 3-bet this hand. It's a pretty good bluff hand. Let's do one more and then let's move on to a different area. So we said King 6 to King 9 suited, so let's pick out a King 7. That's probably another limped one. Let's try the hand below. Okay, so King 7. Yeah, what do you think about this one?
I think it should also be just 3-bet.
I mean, this guy is possibly on the tighter side. I'm not sure. Like 52 hands and he's got 13-10. So, you know, sometimes if people are huge nits, you don't have to take these spots. But let's say for a minute that we don't have any information on him. This is a pretty easy 3-bet. So there's something you should be doing a bit more, generally.
Yeah.
Okay, so any questions?
Not really. No.
Okay, alright. So let's clear the filters. Let's check out some other stats. Okay, so let's look at versus 3-bet folds. 62.1. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I think I think it's good.
Yeah, I think it's fine as well.
It's about right, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just going to put here 3-bet more in position we've just looked at. But yeah, folded 3-bet looks fine. The only slight issue is, if you look at by position, you can see it's there's a sudden jump. So button and cutoff, you're folding about 65, 66%. But then when you look at EP and MP, you're suddenly folding like 51, 53%. It's possible that you're defending too wide in these situations. In fact, let's just run a really quick filter. So just because we start out with a tighter range from under the gun, it doesn't necessarily mean that we defend more often against a 3-bet. What we'll also do is we'll just put facing 3-bet size. We'll just filter out any min 3-bets. We're not interested in those. So we'll just put it was greater than 7BB 3-bet. Okay, let's just run that filter. We'll just choose EP. Let's have a look at your defending range. Yeah, so there's some hands I just think shouldn't be in here unless, well, just like Ace King, Ace Jack, King Queen. Some of these hands look strange. Let's just open one and see what we're looking at here. I mean, one thing to keep in mind as well is at these limits, people just don't 3-bet very much. There's a possibility this guy's an exception. I'm not sure. We've got 109 hands and he's playing 29-24 with a 16% 3-bet, so maybe he's an exception to the rule. But your standard calling strategy here shouldn't have Ace-Jack. Let's just look at what your calling strategy looks like. So if we go to versus 3-bet, so UTG versus 3-bet, we're in position. No, we're out of position. So let's have a look. So you can see this is a very tight range. So calling range is blue. So like 9s through queens and ace king, re-raising range aces and kings, and if you want to have a bluffing range, which you possibly don't at 5NL or 10NL, can include some combos of ace queen as a 4-bet bluff, but ace jack is going to be too wide, especially as a call. This guy does look a bit aggressive though. Maybe that's why you called. Let's try another hand that's not a call. Seems to be quite a few king queens in here as well. Let's see what happens. Okay, so big blind 3-bets. This guy doesn't look out of line. He looks like a reg. Just incidentally, what do you think a reg's 3-betting range here is? You know, just a standard tag reg. He 3-bets against UTG Open. What kind of hands?
Yeah, actually now I think that it's heavily for value because he's out of position and he's 3-betting versus an under the gun range. So I think he's pretty strong here usually.
Yeah. And, you know, not even every reg will 3-bet ace-king here, actually. A lot of regs won't 3-bet ace-king. There are quite a few regs who will only 3-bet kings and aces right now.
Wow.
So
then this is super bad, yeah.
Yeah, you can see what the problem is. We have a lot of reverse implied odds, right?
Yeah.
Like, even if we do flop a king or a queen, there's no guarantee our hand's good. In fact, even if we flop 2-pair, there's no guarantee our hand's good here. So, very, very close situation. Let's just have a look at a range. Oh, sorry, that's a Skype window. Let's have a look at a range just for this spot. We'll have a look at what I consider an optimal range, but I don't think really players 3-bet this at all. So it would be big blind versus UTG. Okay, so blue is the flatting range. Okay, so 3-betting range, you can see value is just aces and kings. And if we have a bluffing range, it's going to be stuff like this, 5-4 to 8-9. But to be honest, I think most people just don't have these hands in their range, and they just have aces and kings.
Yeah.
And it's not actually correct to 3-bet ace king here. Like if we're in this spot and we have ace king, and we're in the big blind, we should just call here. We shouldn't really 3-bet usually.
Wow.
So you can see what the problem is, right? You're just going to end up very dominated post flop. And he folds a flop c-bet, which is fine. That's correct. So it seems like you might be calling a little bit too wide from early, I would imagine. Seems to be a few hands like this. Yeah, this is going to be... I mean, he's obviously a reasonably aggressive reg because he is bluffing with ace-jack here, so it makes the call a little bit better, but in general, you actually, when I look at his stats, I'm surprised he even has ace-jack here because he's got 4.3% 3-bet. So I wouldn't even expect him to have ace-jack in his range, so this is not a great call.
Yeah, he looks really tight.
Because you see, here's the problem is, you flop a queen, and okay, we can see that you've got the best hand, but a lot of the time you can have things like ace-queen, you can have kings and aces, so it's really hard to just keep on calling down or anything. River, I guess, check. He does actually bluff on the river. And you call, which... I mean, what do you think of your call here?
I have no idea. I think it's kind of bad. He'll have a ton of aces and kings with a club. So single club hands, and maybe even hands like flushes on the turn, some, because I don't block any. So.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a super bad call actually.
Yeah.
Um, the funny thing is you ended up being right, so you could pretend it was a sick hero call or something, but I think it's just a bad call.
Yeah.
The kind of hands that we would bluff catch here with are, well, what kind of hands would we bluff catch here with generally?
Sets, I guess. Sets only.
Yes, sets, or depending on our
And
pre-flop.
some jacks, I guess. Oh no, Jack is on the board. I guess bluff catching it's even bluff catching if we have like a 10 of clubs.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
he has.
Yeah. Yeah, you're completely right. So the hands we use to bluff catch are club draws, like weaker club flushes and sets, but definitely not king queen. By the time you get to king queen, you're just calling way too wide. Because think of how many better hands there are than king queen. There's all sets, all
Yeah,
flushes. There's straights. There's two pair combos. There's no reason to ever bluff catch here. But anyway, nice hand. He had ace jack, so just raise a huge pot with your bluff catcher. All right. Okay. So yeah, let's just
Secrets.
Sorry, say again. Oh, sick reads. Okay. So let's just
I
make a-
just said, yeah.
What did you say?
No, it's nothing. I just wanted to repeat. I thought you didn't understand what I said.
Okay. So let's
About
put
the reads, yeah.
Okay, so let's put be careful about calling versus 3-bets after opening from EP. Probably the same thing going on in MP. While we're here, I mean, we may as well just check the button since we've already run the filter. This is your calling range on the button. Okay, I mean,
Wow.
roughly it looks okay. There's some strange hands here that shouldn't be in there. Let's
Yeah.
just look at the hand count instead. So let's just open one hand that probably shouldn't be there. So A7 offsuit. Okay, this guy makes it 35. This guy folds. So what's the best play here?
I don't know. He seems really fishy by his stats, so I guess calling isn't so bad, but it could be. Depends on what he's doing with what he's 3-betting here.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether he's fishy. He might be, or whether he's just very aggressive. Could be either. Could be a fish. Could be
Yeah.
a really aggressive regular or something.
Yeah, it's small sample. I just saw right now, so I guess this is a fold, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's just say I don't recommend it. I mean, you're right. Like, it can't be super terrible. You do have an ace, so you're gonna have a decent amount of equity. You can flop top pair. But I would just nearly always fold here in this spot. Let's just have a quick look at a calling range in this situation. So button versus 3-bet. So here you go. So dark blue is the calling range. Light red is the 4-bet for value range. Dark red is the 4-bet bluff range. And it's about a 1-to-1 bluff to value ratio. So bluffs, 4-bet bluffs 3.62, 4-bet for value about 3. So roughly 1-to-1. And then flats about 12% flatting range here. So you can see it's stuff like any suited Broadway, some of the best offsuit Broadways, pocket pairs from 5s and up, and then some of the best suited connectors and gappers. But A7 is not even close to being a call, really. It's reasonably far outside the range. So I don't recommend the call here. I think folding's good. So I think it's just a case of, you know, going over what your strategy is exactly and making sure you don't fall too far outside of it. But there are
Yeah,
many
I
of these
guess so.
hands, so I don't think this is like a big problem.
Yeah.
Most of your calling hands are okay. So again, here in this spot, what's your opinion here?
I should just fold. That's it. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
too wide if I call
Yeah.
this hand.
It's, you know, it's not impossible that you can make this profitable. I just don't recommend it. It's just going to be a lot harder to make money here with 5-8 than it is to make money with 7-8, for example. So
Yeah, yeah.
even if you can somehow play super well post-flop and make money, the game's a lot harder for you than it needs to be. You're going to have to use a lot more energy and brain power to make, you know, 0.2 of a big blind here or something. Maybe it's just not worth it. You may as well just fold and move on. And then there's a chance you're actually losing money, which is obviously an even better reason to fold. Okay, so yeah, just let's just make a note of this. So I don't think this is a big problem. There's only 1 or 2 hands here. So let's just go over button call versus 3-bet ranges. Alright. Okay, any questions on defending against 3 bets?
No.
Okay.
I guess there's if I am out of position, specifically small blind versus big blind, what should I be defending from the small blind against big blind 3-bet?
Okay, that's a good question. Let's have a quick look. Okay, so this is obviously a really tough spot to play in. It's like one of the worst spots to face a 3-bet in.
Yeah.
So it's okay to fold quite often, actually. You can see 65% fold frequency here, assuming a 36% raise first in strategy. So you can see here calling range in dark blue, 4-betting range in dark red. It looks like it's super aggressive, but it's only because it's a suited combos. The ratio is actually not that aggressive. You can see it's almost 1-to-1 again. 3.62 bluffs, 3.02 value 4-bets, and that's your flatting range there. So a lot tighter when we're out of position. Something like this should work okay. Now, since it's such a difficult spot, no one likes to open raise a small blind and face a 3-bet from the big blind. This is exactly why I quite like using a completing strategy in the small blind against certain opponents, because it takes away a lot of their firepower. So if you don't raise from the small blind, they can't 3-bet. So you can take that away from them, which is why, maybe we won't go into this now, but there's an article on PokerVIP.com that I wrote on small blind completing strategy. But the basic idea is, I think I've got the range here somewhere. The basic idea is you can actually, if someone's like a hyper-aggressive reg, you can start playing a bit more like this, where you just limp everything in this range. You limp raise the hands in light red, you limp raise the hands in dark red, you limp call the hands in dark blue, and you limp fold the hands in light blue. So you avoid as many 3-bet situations, or if you do get into a 3-bet pot, you're the one with initiative. So,
yeah, that's actually really nice. And you keep the pot small if you have like a hand that wants to see a flop.
Exactly. So if you've got like Queen 9 suited or something, you want to see a flop, but you don't want to play a 3-bet pot out of position with it. So you just limp call. Very easy. And then obviously you don't just play passively on the flop, either you check raise aggressively and you float and stuff like this. But yeah, if you want to get full details, search for the article on PokerVIP.com. It's just called Small Blind Completing Strategy or something. And okay, does that answer your question, or you have more questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it, I think.
Okay, so let's go back to your overall stats again. So let's have a look at... Okay, after I saw that river call, I really just want to go straight and look at your river call efficiency because I'm curious.
Yeah, I think it's bad.
It's okay. Like we're looking for 1.4 to 1.6 here roughly, so you're slightly below what you should be. So you possibly are calling a bit too much in some spots, but I don't think it's like a huge problem that's destroying your win rate or anything. I mean, it's obviously not because you've got a pretty good win rate. So there's probably some work that needs to be done here, but it's not like a huge problem. There's probably just 1 or 2 bad calls in your database. Okay, so let's have a look at. I also wanted to check these numbers. So went to showdown, $1 at showdown and 1 win saw flop. So went to showdown's 30, $1 at showdown's 55, 1 win saw flop's 44. Do you have any thoughts on these stats?
Yeah, I think the went to showdown is a bit too high. It should be about 20 to 25%, I think.
Yeah.
And the 1 went so flop is a bit lower than I would want it to be because I think I play too passive in some spots. So.
Yep.
That could be the reason for both of these stats. Yeah.
Yep. So I think you've got it completely right there. You see, if you play a bit more aggressively in certain spots, you bluff a bit more. Well, firstly, your win to showdown goes down because it doesn't get checked down as much. Sometimes you bet your opponent folds. Your 1 win saw flop goes up because you're bluffing more.
Yeah.
And then your $1 at showdown actually goes down because sometimes you bluff and your opponent calls and you don't win as much at showdown. So I think that's what your game is missing, bluffs in certain spots. So this is why we have these stats here. Actually, I just want to check as well your c-bet stat first. So what's your thoughts on your flop c-bets 49.2?
I think it should be about 55. at least, or 50. It's a bit too low on the flop, I think.
Yeah. In fact, it should 55 is a very balanced approach, but actually should probably be higher than this. The reason why is if we just head over to the CBET success report here. Let's just clear these filters. Still got some old filters here. If you look at your flop CBET success versus one opponent, you can see it's 44.7. So that's how often you take the pot down if you CBET. Now, what do you think is the relevance of this number here?
Yeah, we could be like c-betting almost any two cards.
Yeah, we could be. Now, that doesn't mean we should c-bet any two cards, because we still have to think, is the EV of c-betting higher than the EV of checking back? Sometimes checking back is just a higher EV play, so we don't c-bet 100%. But if we did, we would still make money with that strategy. Because we're making lots of profit. So for that reason, because players don't defend properly against c-bets, then it's actually a good idea at these limits to actually c-bet more than about 55% and even go for 65% or so c-betting frequency. Now this is one of the things that's going to be linked to your red line as well and your win to showdown. There's often a very strong link between the win to showdown stat and the flop c-bet stat. The higher the flop c-bet stat gets, the lower the win to showdown stat gets, because you're just taking the pot down on the flop a lot more often. So I think that's the first thing that we should just write here in the document. Okay, so firstly we'll put one win to flop is low, and we'll put win to showdown is high, and one of the causes of this, a low flop c-bet. So that's something that probably needs a decent amount of work. Another thing we should just check while we're on the topic of c-betting is, how is it broken down in terms of this is your flop c-bet in position, this is your flop c-bet out of position. Now at the moment, as you can see, they're very similar, right? It's about 50%, it's about 50%, and they shouldn't be like this at all. There should be at least a 15% difference between these two stats. So if you've got a flop c-bet...
Yeah, I want to say just IP should be a lot higher because we can abuse our position.
Exactly, yeah, you're completely right. So, flop c-bet of 47.8 out of position, that's okay, that's fine. There's no problem with that, but your flop c-bet in position should now be like 70% or 75% or something, and then the average is going to be like 60% overall flop c-bet or something. So there's a little bit of an issue here. It looks like you're actually using the same criteria to make your c-betting decisions regardless of whether you're in position or out of position. And c-betting in position, c-betting out of position, it's like a completely different thing. It's almost like you're playing two different games. So you have to really think about, well, definitely boosting this flop c-bet in position for sure.
Yeah.
So actually what we'll do is on the notes we'll put, especially flop c-bet in position is very low at 50%. Okay, so we won't look into that now, because I guess we don't have time, and there might be some other stats that are better to just check. So as I was saying before, one of the reasons I've added all of these stats here is because these are very helpful with red line. In fact, every single stat I've added here is an automatic profit spot in No Limit Holder. So for example, bet flop in position versus skip c-bet. The average player is probably folding anywhere between about 55 and, well, 60%, like the average population folding frequency. It depends on your network or your limits, but people are folding maybe 60% in this spot. So this is how you're responding to a spot where you can make automatic profit. You're just only betting 46% of the time, basically.
Yeah, I bet even less than what I c-bet, so that's really bad.
Yeah, because
this should be a lot higher.
It definitely should
be a lot higher.
Yeah, it should be like around the 70% mark. This is a hugely profitable and very easy way as well to make money. It's basically just if your opponent skips a c-bet out of position, bet the flop. It's that simple. You're just going to be printing money in that spot. It doesn't really matter too much what your whole cards are. Now again, it doesn't mean it should be 100%, because again, there are spots where checking back has a high EV than taking a stab against the miss c-bet. But just put it this way, if you're not sure what to do, then just bet every time. That's much better than betting 46%, because you're just leaving money on the table at the moment. So bet flop versus skip c-bet in position. The same for bet turn in position. So basically we call the flop in position, our opponent checks the turn. We should be betting probably about 70% at least. So again, this is pretty low. So those are the first two things. So bet flop in position versus skip c-bet. needs to be higher, and then also same for the turn. Okay. There's a video series that I made. It's a 2-part series on PokerVIP that goes over this. It's called the first part's called Intermediate Bluffing Spots, and the second part's called Advanced Bluffing Spots. So if you want to see just some examples of how this works, then check out those videos maybe.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll just write it down so I don't forget.
Okay, sure. So bet river. Now this we can't get this to 70%, it's just not possible. And the reason why is by the time we've called flop and we've called turn in position, we usually have quite a lot of hands like top pair in our range. And those hands can't really fire the river, especially if the kicker's weak. They're just not quite strong enough to get value, but we obviously don't want to turn them into a bluff, so they end up as checks. But usually we can get the stat to about 50% because, again, it's an automatic profit spot. So the way it works is, let's say a small blind opens and we're in the big blind, and we cold call pre-flop, and let's say we flop a flush draw. So we call the flop, which is fine. We call the turn, which is fine. We brick on the river, and then our opponent checks the river. That's a spot where we can make automatic profit with a bet. Actually, you'll be very surprised. Let me just show you. Like I always thought this was absolutely insane the first time I noticed it. Let's just wait for your HUD to load. When you skip your river c-bet out of position, let's say you're the one, you bet the flop, you bet the turn, and then you check the river out of position. How much do you think that you're check folding? I mean, I don't know, but I'm guessing. I might have an idea. How much do you think? Like, what would you guess your stat is?
I'm really not sure. I think it's high. It's higher than it should be, I guess, but I have no idea. Probably like 70% or something.
Yeah, let's have a look. If I can get the pop-ups to work. Alright, so you're completely right actually. You skip river c-bet out of position, check fold's about 68%. Which is actually on the low side compared to a lot of the regs you'll find. You'll find guys literally are check folding like 80 to 90% in this spot. And it's a really simple reason. Like if they had something, they would triple barrel. So when they fire 2 and then check the river, it just means they don't have anything that strong. Otherwise they would have fired the river. Yeah. So again, it's another automatic profit spot. It's difficult to say exactly what the stat should be just because it really depends on how you construct your flop and turn calling range and position. But just bear in mind that spot. If you call 2 streets in position with a draw and you brick the river, you should just nearly always be bluffing when your opponent checks because they're just going to be falling so frequently. Okay, so now bet turn out of position versus skip c-bet and bet river out of position. These are also known as probe bets. So basically, let's say button opens and we call in the big blind and we check the flop, and then instead of c-betting he decides to just check back the flop. We should be leading the turn very, very often. Probably about 70% of the time. You can see your turn probe here is about 36%. Again, it's another automatic profit spot. Same for bet river. So the way this works is we defend in the big blind against the button open. We check call the flop as a float out of position. Our opponent checks back the turn. We should be leading the river with any air hand, basically. So again, another automatic profit spot. So delayed c-bet. Now, even just to illustrate this, for delayed c-bet, I've actually added delayed c-bet success here. So you can see that when you delayed c-bet, you take the pot down 57.1% of the time. So what do you think is the significance of this number here?
Well, we can bet a certain size that's usually profitable for our hand, any hand, basically.
Yeah, and it's not just slightly profitable. This is hugely profitable because let's say we delayed c-bet for half pot, for example. How much do we need to get folds in that kind of situation?
Like for just a second, half pot. I have a calculator.
That's okay.
Here, so.
Okay, great.
It's 33%. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need 33% folds, and we're getting 57.1% folds. So like this is insane. It's just like hugely profitable for us to bet here. So just to give, I mean, I'm curious to check your stats in these spots. So let's just do this in reverse. Let's see how much you're folding in these spots. Sometimes you get an idea of what the population is doing. So let's just wait for your HUD to load again. Okay, so for example, if we bring up the Let's see how much you fold to turn probes, for example. Yeah, I'm surprised you actually fold way less than the population. You fold about 47. There's still enough for people to make automatic profit, actually. But the population is usually
I
folding.
think that's because I am passive on the flop sometimes, so I have some good hands sometimes
Yeah, it definitely could be true, yeah.
on the turn. Yeah.
Whereas if you look at your fold river probe, now you're playing a bit closer to the population. Can you see how much you're folding to river probe bets?
Yeah, 70%. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's exploitable from everyone. Yeah.
yeah, no, we're not saying this is a problem, but we're just saying actually a lot of your opponents play exactly like this. They fold 71%. So if you check call the flop out of position and they check back the turn, you should just always bet the river with any air hand. Okay, let's look at a quick example. I think we've got time just to filter for this. So let's say, okay, so did call equals true. Let's say that we are out of position, and let's say that the action was flop was check call. Okay, so we check call, float the flop out of position. Turn goes check check, and then river. We have the option to probe bet, but we just check. So this basically shows all of the hands that you had the option to probe the river, but you decided not to.
Okay.
So what we're looking for here is we're looking for any air hand, basically, but also any value hand. This is a kind of spot where you should bet very thin for value as well. You should actually take anything that's about second pair, top kicker and better, and just bet for value on the river. Actually, what we can do, just to speed this up a bit, is if we go to hand value filters, filtered by river hand strength, and just put that we didn't have a made hand. Now, ideally, there would just be 0 results here, and actually there aren't many at all, which is good. So maybe it's good to spend time looking if you're missing some value bets, for example. Let's have a look what's here. Okay, so at least we can look at a couple of examples quickly, just so you can see what we're talking about. So we have 8-9 in the small blind, and cutoff decides to open min raise. We defend by calling, which is likely fine against a min raise. So we flop a gut shot and the backdoor flush, and also some other backdoor straights. He c-bets. Actually, what was his c-bet size? He actually min bets. Okay. So, I mean, you can imagine he just makes a regular size c-bet if you want. Anyway, he checks back. So the idea is, you know, let's say for some reason he likes to slow play on the flop and just bet really small with a set. But when we get to the turn, which is, you know, double flush turn basically, and he decides to check instead of double barrel, what assumptions can we make about his range here?
Yep, he probably doesn't have a flush draw.
He doesn't have
basically.
He doesn't have a flush draw, but also he
or
doesn't
a
have
strong value.
Exactly. This guy
Yeah,
never has
yeah.
a queen. He never has a set. He never has a straight. He never has two pair. Because otherwise, it would just be a ridiculous turn check back. In other words, it's a spot where he has a capped range. Because if he had something, he's going to fire again. So this is why we know that maybe we have a bluffing opportunity coming up on the river. The other thing here is, of course, that we have 8-9 high, which means that if we check here on the river and he checks back, we're even going to lose to some really bad hands, like, for example, King 7 offsuit. We will lose here on the river against that hand, or against pocket twos or something. Actually, even 10 high beats a hand, right? So maybe he's got 10 deuce offsuit and he's just about to win this part of showdown. That's not good for us. So basically, any air hand in this spot, we just lead the river. 50 to 60% pot will be fine, but we should just always bluff here. Good for our winter showdown. So you can see another hand here with the Jack 10. We cold call pre-flop, we check call the flop with our gut shot. Our opponent check back the turn, and we have Jack high in the river. We should just always lead because we can fold out stuff like pocket twos, for example. So just a really easy river bluff with any two cards. So here in the big blind, we have ace jack. We floated the flop. On the river, it can be tempting after the turn gets checked through to check again for showdown value. But there's a couple of reasons why we should just bet anyway. Let's just go through them. Now, I think you did end up winning a showdown, I think. So he checks back the turn, so again, he's capped, he doesn't have anything. and we get to the river. Now, it's certainly not unreasonable to check, because that ace-jack high could be good, actually. You know, he might just have random garbage.
Yeah.
But why do you think the EV of betting ace-jack is probably still higher than the EV of checking, even though we have ace-jack high?
He could have some really weak fives or pocket fours or threes that he played this way, and that he'd probably just fold on the river.
Exactly.
Small pocket pairs.
Yeah, exactly. Even stuff like ace-queen, ace-king, or ace-jack for the chop, he can fold.
Yeah.
There's another reason as well. So you've got the first one, so well done. But what do you think the other reason might be as well? Why betting is still better than checking?
He doesn't have a 10. I don't know.
Okay, so just think about this for a minute. We can see his hand. We know that he's got Jack 8. We know that we win at showdown. But what do you think he might do with his Jack 8 that makes our life difficult?
Oh yeah, he could bluff it instead of us, so he could make us fold with the worst hand.
And what are you doing with are you ace jack? Are you going to check call, or are you going to check fold in the spot?
No. I'm probably folding here, so yeah,
exactly.
Betting is better. Yeah.
And so check folding is, you know, if you check and he bets, you should fold. That's correct. I don't think you should hero call here with ace jack high. And he won't bluff that much, but why give him the opportunity to bluff? So this is one of those spots in poker. You know, very often people think that the point of bluffing is to fold out better hands, and it is mostly. But there's also spots where it's actually very good for us if we can fold out worse hands, because we stop those hands from being able to bluff us. So, you know, he's probably not going to bluff raise Jack 8, but if we check, he might decide to turn it into a bluff. So there's the two main reasons why you should still just bet, even if you have showdown value usually in this spot. If you've got anything that's ace high or lower, then just always bet the river as a probe.
Okay.
Now
I just have a question.
Yeah, sure.
What size would you use here? Is like half pot enough to make him fold?
Yes, 50 to 60% pot. Yeah.
Small.
Yeah.
Oh,
so you know,
good,
maybe
cool.
about 40 here or something. Right. So that was just one example, but you can see you have to work on probe turn bets. Need to be higher. You know what a probe is, right? You understand what I mean by probe bets?
Yeah.
Yep. So probe turn bets needs to be higher. Same for river. Probe river bets need to be higher, and delayed C bets as well. Delayed C bets need to be higher. Okay. So if we were to like summarize everything, in fact, what I'll do is let me put that in your Skype window so you've got a copy of what you need to work on. So basically, I think there's kind of been two parts to this discussion today. The first one is just basic pre-flop stuff. Okay, so thinking about increasing button steals, 3-betting more aggressively from certain spots, working on your big blind cold calling range. So that's like the first area. The second area is all to do with one win saw flop and your red line. And okay, we haven't had time to look at this in detail, but all of these spots need quite a lot of work, basically. Float bets and pro bets, as Poker Tracker 4 calls them, and also c-betting as well. Like if you can find more spots to c-bet aggressively. In fact, that's one thing we should write down as well. C-bet in position and out position is the same, or roughly the same, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's basically it. Two main areas. So the first one was pre-flop stuff. The second one was trying to improve your one-win saw flop and your red line. So do you understand what you have to do? Do you have any questions?
I think I have an idea of what I should be working on in the future. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So just remember as well, there were two resources we talked about. I can't remember what the first one was, actually. Okay, yeah, the article. Okay, so article was on small blind completing.
Oh yeah.
And also videos. There's one called Intermediate Bluffing Strategy and Advanced Bluffing Strategy. Okay, and also, just while we're on this topic, for your c-bet, there's a 3-part article series called Advanced C-Betting that I wrote for PokerVIP as well. That should help you to boost your c-betting frequency, and also it will help you understand the difference between c-betting in position and out of position. And then also, I think as well, there's a video on advanced 3-betting, actually, which might be useful. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just repaste this to you actually with the extra stuff added in. So that's the best place to start in terms of materials. Just go and check out these resources on PokerVIP. Just paste that in your Skype. Alright, okay, so I guess we're just about out of time. So let me know on Skype if you have any problems or additional questions. And meantime, hope you have good luck with your grind, and hope to hear from you pretty soon.
Thank you. You too.
Alright, no problem. See ya.
See ya.